Hey, everybody, and welcome to this latest episode of the Fantasy Fullback Dive, brought to you by the good people at the Roto Street Journal. In the weeds for the fourth time, almost halfway through our divisional breakdown series for the upcoming fantasy season. We're hitting the NFC South today. Of course, the Fantasy Fullback Dive is paving your way to fantasy glory, acting as your lead blocker to fantasy excellence, hopefully titles, and more titles. There's a guy on Game of Thrones that was like, titles. Robert Baratheon, maybe? Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, I, of course, am your host, Nat the Truth Jones. With me, as always, the Wolf of Roto Street himself. And this is a special weather edition as well. Bonus.
Yeah.
What's going on there, man?
We've got a tornado warning, which you don't typically – it might be the first I've ever had in my life up here in northeastern Massachusetts. So who knows? Fingers crossed everything will be okay. It's scheduled to hit my town around 1:50. Of course, all the panic, family texting, it's scheduled to hit Centerville right at 1:50. Make sure you're in the basement. So who knows? If I end up getting just swept away, though, I love all of you. It's been real. Hopefully this won't be the last I see of you, though.
It's going to create, if you get swept away, it's going to create a real power vacuum at the RSJ. So,
yeah, exactly.
Since we're on the Game of Thrones theme, you could see some real bloodletting happening. So I hope that you're okay. If the tornado comes in as scheduled, who's CJ's equivalent on Game of Thrones?
I feel like CJ's a little bit of a Peter Baelish. Like he knows everybody. He gets his hands in on everything. I guess that suggests he's a little bit slimier than CJ really is. But he just reminds me of Baelish because he's talking to everybody all the time, Right.
Yeah. All right, that's a fair comp. If the tornado comes in as scheduled, we should be being struck by that right around the middle of the Panthers segment. So, we should be able to get the Falcons in at least anyway.
Sweet.
You ready to dive right into this thing?
Let's do it. While we're still alive without tornadoes, why don't we I'll pull these on in. I'm going to be making sure I'm on top of the banners a little bit better than I was the other days. I've been so warped up and pumped to give you guys these projections that I've been forgetting to change the banners as we go, for those of you who might have noticed that the other couple days. Sorry. And I'll try to do my best to be better about that today.
All right. Well, we're going to start on the Falcons. The Falcons, this team holds a special place in my heart because on the projection page, this is the default team that just comes up right away. So It's like, just because I've seen them more times than anyone else, I feel like these are really imprinted into my mind. Tell me about the Falcons this year.
Yeah, so I think where my projections are going to really differ from most is I'm expecting them to be a bit run heavier than they've been the past 5 years. Than I think they've been maybe since Matt Ryan arrived there, and that's because Arthur Smith is going there. If you look at the research tool, you can tell that Arthur Smith 684, 628, 617. Rush attempts these last couple years, he's certainly far more run heavy, and compared to 45 pass attempts, he's been 50+% run heavy in his stops. Now, when you have Derrick Henry, that makes a lot of sense. He's already come out and said you shouldn't expect the same offense in Atlanta when you don't have a Derrick Henry here. Like, that would be foolish. I still think he schemes up one of the best power zone. Like, he mixes all the run concepts similar to Greg Roman does in Baltimore. So I do think he'll try to get the run going, whether or not they can stick to it because that horrible defense and they just don't really have a back that can sustain a monster workload. I don't think they'll be overly run heavy, but I do think I'm projecting to be a bit more run heavy than the consensus projections out there.
All right. Well, starting at the top, let's start with Matt Ryan. He was a one-time fantasy darling. He's now kind of a little ho-hum. You got him for 376 completions out of 565 attempts, a little over 4,500 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 picks. My comments next to this were, I just wrote whatever.
Exactly.
You've got Ryan as your QB 20 on projections, 17 on the big board. I'm not excited.
No, and I don't think there's a huge reason to be. You were excited about this guy in the past because of the volume, because of the weapons. There's no Konami upside. So again, this just becomes like a more expensive Kirk Cousins. Ryan Fitzpatrick will go a round or two later. I don't see any reason. I haven't really drafted Matt Ryan on any early best ball or real drafts so far. He'll be okay. He'll be steady. He could be a good bridge to a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields who we keep harping on. Get one of those guys no matter what. Certainly has that type of like nice floor that's okay, but 17, 20-ish. The only upside is going to be one. Arthur Smith was so efficient as a play caller in the red zone that if that carries over to the Falcons and they end up like approaching Tennessee Titans levels where they've been top 3 in touchdowns the last 3 years, well, then, okay, maybe there is like 40 touchdown upside with Matt Ryan. But I think without Julio Jones there, like you're really going to need Kyle Pitts to be the realest of deals. And he could be. I mean, he is a freak. But to me, they're just between the weapons leaving and a run heavier offense and no rushing upside for Matt Ryan himself. He's a more expensive Kirk Cousins, and I'm not really – whatever was a great way to describe it. We probably didn't even need to say much more after that, Nat.
Thank you. I'm 1 for 1. Running back, their top guy on the running backs is Mike Davis. This is a guy who – I've got my auction coming up tonight with my hometown league, and it's like,
I'm excited for you, man.
Yeah, just kind of like I touched on in the beginning of the show with the Atlanta thing coming on first, so I know them well. It's like we've done these NFC shows every day. I know so much more about the NFC than I do about the NFC. So I'm anticipating a heavy NFC auction from the truth today. Mike Davis is a guy I kind of have my eye a little bit on if the price is right. You never know how these auction prices are going to go, but it's possible he could go kind of cheap. Anyway, you got him rushing 244 times, almost 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. It's not a bad line, not huge receiving numbers. And you got him, your RB 19 on projections, 20 on the big board, which for running backs is actually pretty valuable. I mean, someone's going to be starting this guy.
Absolutely. And he kind of falls in what has been coined by the industry as the running back dead zone, where, and it makes sense because receivers in those middles, rounds 4 through 6, typically outscore the running backs by a hefty margin. Now, if of the guys in that range, I do like Darrell Henderson. We talked about him earlier in the week, but I also do like Mike Davis as well, because as I said, I think this Atlanta team is going to want to be run heavier. Whether they can sustain that, we'll find out. And I do think Davis is really the only guy they have on the roster with any type of credibility. I don't think he's amazing, but he did break more tackles per attempt than anyone other than who led it last year. I know Davis was 2. I think Nick Chubb.
It was Chubb.
It was Chubb, number 1. And he can catch. I mean, he filled in for Christian McCaffrey admirably. He had plenty of games with like 10-plus targets over there for the Panthers. So 45 catches, 292, 2 touchdowns. Not a huge output, but certainly your type of 3-down horse you don't typically find there in rounds 5, 6. So if he's going cheap at an auction, $6 to $10 range.
Right.
For the running backs in that range, like one of my favorite RB3s. I hope he's not higher than that for me, but as like a potential flex option, I really do like Davis. And I think I'm a bit higher than the ECR on him coming into this year. And these projections show why. I really think he's going to get a lot of work. Behind him, looking at the backfields, is only Quadri Allison. Now, I just only want to point that out. It's not that important, but as a last-round pick, I was preaching Jevian Hawkins. We had Thor over from Roto World come on, or NBC Sports Edge, whatever they're called nowadays. I always mix that up. He loves Jevian Hawkins as an undrafted free agent, but unfortunately, 6 yards on 7 carries in the opening preseason game, whatever it ended up being. The team is very clearly committed to Quadri Allison, according to the camp reports. He's the clear number 2. Well, that is important in the sense that Mike Davis hasn't held up to volume. He's typically broken down, as he did last year, by the end of the season. So Allison could end up becoming, he's a big guy, like 240 pounds, like real thick. He could end up becoming like very, 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 very light Derrick Henry if something happens to Mike Davis and he's the only guy left. Could be a good source of touchdowns. So I love stabbing at him in the last rounds of these best ball drafts. If you're going 20 rounds in a hometown league or something, not a bad like $1 late flyer. Certainly not the top of my list on that, but just a name to toss out there.
All right, let's move on to the receiving core. And of course, that starts with Calvin Ridley.
This is where the intrigue begins.
97 catches. You got him for almost 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns. I feel like you've come down a tiny bit. I feel like you had him over 100 catches not that long ago, but still, I mean, monster numbers, good enough for your wide receiver 5 on your projections board and 4 on the big board. We could talk about Ridley, although what is there to really talk about? I'm actually more interested in talking about who's behind Ridley, and that's Russell Gage, who is somebody I'm just going to admit I don't think I'd heard of him. I'm pleading ignorance on this one, but I've learned a little about him since I saw him on these projections. You got him down for 57 catches, 627, 4 touchdowns. I mean, you see this guy as a 90 target guy. That's plenty. Although you have him only wide receiver 70 on your projections board, you've actually got him up at 48 on the big board. Just assuming someone's got to catch these balls, right? And so my thought is someone's going to catch him. I'm not positive it's going to be Russell Gage.
Yeah, it's tricky. So starting at the top, Calvin Ridley, 26% target share, absolute hog. I think he's going to be a beast. And honestly, like 147 targets might be on the low side of projections. Yeah. That's kind of baked into the fact I think they're going to run more than people are expecting. But if you told me Calvin Ridley at the end of the year saw 170 targets and then had, another 300 yards and another touchdown or two added onto this, like, wouldn't be shocked at all. And that's why I have him ranked as a borderline fringe first rounder on my big board. So yeah, absolutely love him. I think there's a whole lot more room for Gage to do more than I have him projected for.
Right.
But he saw about 100 targets last year with Julio being out, and he saw some good volume, just didn't do a lot with it. He's very inefficient, but they're saying he is the clear number 2 in camp, that they, all the other receivers are working with special teams and different things, and he's kind of getting the veteran number 2 treatment. So I like him, but as you'll see in a second when we get there, like I think he's at best third on the target totem pole because there is a monster coming in at the tight end position we'll talk about. So I'm not getting Gage much. He goes in a range where well before a Marquez Callaway, who we'll talk about a little bit. I think is a huge sleeper. Tyrus Marshall, we're going to talk about a little bit. Like guys I just really like as talents that I think if they saw even close to the work he's going to get would do so much more worth, with it. So I don't really, he's just like one of those okay floor, but really low ceiling guys. And I like to swing for the fences with all my picks. You know that, Nat. I've always been an upside star fucker chaser, whatever you want to call me. So I'm not really that in on Gage at his price, even if I think he'll be pretty steady. It's just not for me.
I'm a little embarrassed, by the way, that Russell Gage got 100 targets last year, and I didn't remember who he was.
Well, I think it's probably because it was some of the most forgettable targets, 100-target season you'll ever see. He did literally nothing. He had 1 or 2 good games, and all the rest were mediocre to bad. So I think that's very telling, Nat. That you
I was going to say,
clue, that tells you why Gage isn't really high on my list because you could see 100 targets and be that forgettable.
Right. Once we have RSJ, once we hit it big and we're in the office or something, we pass a guy in the hall and we're just like, who's that guy? And he's like, I've worked here for 4 years.
Exactly.
That's Russell Gage. He's the Russell Gage of the office.
Right. Exactly.
All right. The monster you were alluding to at tight end, Kyle Pitts, 77 catches, 113 targets, almost 900 yards and 9 touchdowns. That would be a hell of a season. It doesn't seem halfway unreasonable if any of the hype is true. Right. You've got him as your tight end 5 on both lists.
In fact, I think I'm as high as these projections are for a rookie tight end. I think I'm a little bit lower than the consensus, and that's baking in the fact this is a rookie tight end. There's a very hard transition to the position, but of course, there's never been a prospect quite like Kyle Pitts. His comparable isn't even a tight end. They compare him to Calvin Johnson. And I mean, you can see why at Florida. Kyle Trask is horrible. He would just chuck the ball up, and Kyle Pitts, didn't matter how many guys he had on him. He leaps up there. He rips it out of the sky. This isn't a tight end. It's unfair that he gets a tight end designation. And right from day one, he could be an absolute monster. I mean, 909 would set the best rookie season that we've ever seen at tight end since Mike Ditka. So I do clearly like the guy. I just think, the fact that I can get TJ Hawkinson, who I as we said yesterday, I think is in line for 130 plus targets a round or two later. That's the one thing with Pitts is he's going late 4th, early 5th.
He's going above Hawkinson?
He's going as the tight end 4 right now. And
that's surprising to me. I would rather have Hawkinson.
I would too. I think there's a higher floor with Hawkinson and a similar ceiling. That's, I guess, the one case for Pitts is if he hits his ceiling, he's putting up 1,400 and 18. He's at 18 touchdowns would be absurd. But you know what I mean? He's got that Kelsey style. He's a freak of all freaks at this position. So maybe, just maybe, he could hit that. I doubt it's going to happen as early as year 1. Love him in Dynasty. I mean, you can consider him at the first overall pick in Dynasty rookie drafts. But still, I'm a little bit hesitant to get this guy. And in fact, I don't have much of him at all because I typically just go for Hawkinson around later if tight ends are falling. But still, all the upside in the world, can't blame you at all if you want to take that stab. If there's no receivers, if the Bengals guys are gone, if Brandon Ayuk's gone and this guy's sitting there in round 5, there is some real upside to Kyle Pitts. But I just think people are a little bit too bullish for a rookie tight end. It's given how hard that position is to translate to.
Yeah, I agree with you. Would be an exciting guy to own, though. Would be fun.
Oh, yeah. If you get him, he's one of those things in an auction that I expect he'll go for more than typical because it's a buzzy name. It's sexy. It's Kyle Pitts, the freak, right? Those are the guys that always go for more in auctions, and they probably should, whereas Hawkinson's Lions, gross. You'll get Hawkinson for like $7 cheaper than Pitts ends up going. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those guys, you see him on your roster, you're excited about, the people in front of you are going to be like, oh, Pitts, you took him from me. Like, you get all the draft day reactions, but we don't win on draft day reactions, unfortunately.
No, sadly not. Before we move on to the Carolina Panthers, how's the weather looking over there?
Still holding up okay. It's 150 is where they said it's supposed to get really bad, and honestly, it seems like it's clearing up. So, big last words before the tornado.
I was going to say, can we get a tornado countdown clock up on the board?
Yeah, exactly. Right, 5 minutes till the wolf is gone. Till he visits Kansas and Dorothy. Seriously, oh God. But yeah, I think that covers about Atlanta, right? Should we move on?
That's Atlanta. Yeah, let's move on to Carolina. And
one of my favorite teams,
guys who are commenting, a lot of our usual guys, we'll get to your comments and questions at the end, I promise.
And I think that's a good point too, guys. I didn't even do the little slutty thing I love to do at the beginning.
Which slut it up, Wolf.
Give me those likes if you're willing to. If you like the content so far, whether you're live or catching the replay, thumbs up, YouTube, Facebook, the like button on Twitter, tweets, retweets, all that good stuff, shares, help us get out to more people. And that's really the goal here, is to try to grow the Wolfpack and just win more fantasy titles for more people. So please consider it. If you find we're giving you any value, that thumbs up button really, really does help us out. I wouldn't be begging for you to do it if it wasn't a big thing. So thank you guys in advance if you consider doing that for us.
And good job moving the Panthers banner down. You're on the ball today.
There we go.
Changes in the Panthers. I mean, one obvious change, they got a new quarterback. Anything else noteworthy before I go into players?
Yeah, the biggest is obviously Darnold and what he's going to bring to the table, which granted, there's huge question marks. So that's going to obviously impact how everyone else does here. They did draft Terrace Marshall as well, a player I love, who I'm going to talk about. But in terms of the coaching front, they still have Joe Brady, who was getting some head coaching calls, one of my most intriguing offensive coordinators. They didn't quite hit that ceiling last year. I think a lot of that was Teddy Bridgewater being a little bit, and I don't know if Sam Darnold's going to help them reach that ceiling either. But just remember, LSU a couple seasons ago shattered NCAA records under Joe Brady's watch. I can't wait to see if Darnold is the real deal. He's going to have no excuses, and we're going to talk about him in a second. As you see, 570 pass attempts, 421 rush, pretty balanced, about 58% pass, 42% rush. Given, you have a back like McCaffrey, you think that'd be a little bit higher, but he's most dangerous when you're using him as a receiver, hence the high pass to rush ratios.
All right, Darnold, 361 out of 570 for about 4,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 16 picks. Not an amazing stat line for 2020 NFL. Personally, I'm pulling for him. I feel like the only reason, though, that to think that he's going to produce along those lines, numbers wise, is just because the Jets are the Jets. And so anyone leaving the Jets, we automatically give like this bump, like post Jets bump. I don't know if he deserves it or not. Well, he's got to prove it. The guy hasn't proven it. I feel like there's guys below him that are going to, be better. Although I hope I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, we'll find out, Nat. This is how I look at it. 100% in agreement that escaping Jets, and specifically Adam Gase Jets. We've seen how many players like Devontae Parker, Le'Veon Bell, have career years without Gase and then just get ruined by Adam Gase. Ryan Tannehill being the clearest example, especially at quarterback position. So I do have hope for Darnold going to a better line, a significantly better weapons cabinet, and significantly better, play calling. What I like about this situation is if it doesn't work out, then there's no real question marks as to who's at fault. Whereas Darnold, at this point, you can say he has not gotten a fair shake. He was dealt the worst possible hand you could possibly get at the NFL level. And now he's coming into a solid, straight, good poker hand right here. And we'll find out what he actually does with it. I do think, there's plenty of bad habits in terms of being too jittery in the pocket. We talked to Ted Nguyen of The Athletic, great interview, great film guy, who said it about 30% Darnold pans out, 70% he doesn't, because he saw so many bad fundamentals that he's not sure he'll ever fix. But he did mention so many positives too in terms of moving, when he is on the run. Great arm, still flash that, what made him a top 3 pick, that cannon. So he's got the upside still there. I personally said it closer 45, 55, because I really do think everything around him is so good that if Darnold has anything of note, he's going to be a solid player this year. So we'll find out. I like him, though, Nat, especially as a last-round dart throw QB. Again, to get to those Trey Lances, to get to those Justin Fields, one of my favorite bridges besides Ted, Ryan Fitzmagic. I think Sam Darnold could be a really interesting flyer late in drafts.
Well, and Ted did say, I think I probably get the quote wrong, but he said something like 30% chance he turns into a, respectable, good quarterback, but that's a realistic chance. 30%
right.
is not a bad chance. And you're saying you think even more even. So
I do, because the surroundings are so well, especially the main guy we're about to talk about here.
All right, well, let's get right into that main guy, CMC, Christian McCaffrey. You got him down for a gaudy stat line, Wolf. 316 carries, 1,359 yards, 16 touchdowns on the ground. That's to go along with his 99 receptions on 114 targets. Let me just stop you right there, that if he gets to 99 receptions, they're going to throw him that 100th ball. The last game of the season. They're not going to let him sit on 99. So I can tell you right now, that's unequivocally wrong. 99 receptions on 114 targets, which is an amazing catch rate, for another 772 and 4 touchdowns. Honestly, if he's catching 99 balls, Wolf, I don't think there's any way he's only scoring 4 times on those. So you like him for another 2,000-yard combined season to go along with 20 touchdowns. I mean, it's a good stat line.
I mean, this is why he's by far, and it's not really even close, the biggest edge you can get in fantasy. You're going in an auction today, Nat. Like, it screwed me over going all in to get McCaffrey last year because he got hurt. And
Right.
It's tough when you put that many eggs into one player's basket. But typically, history would suggest you're right in doing so. And if he hits these stats, whatever you pay for him won't be enough if he does what I think he's going to be doing. Because you think about the last time we saw this guy on the field, I was actually writing about it earlier today. It was insane. He outscored the next closest running back by 6. I think it was 160 points, which was Aaron Jones that season in 2019. He broke his own reception record with 116. He had like 2,300 total yards. The first 1,000 rushing, 1,000 receiving season since Marshall Faulk. I think one of only 3 players to ever do it. The guy is a genuine freak. And what's so crazy about that is last year he was actually averaging more fantasy points per game in the few that we saw him than that historic season before. It was 29 points per game the historic season. He was actually averaging over 30 points per game last year. So, I mean, it wasn't like this guy was going to be a bust if he was on the field. He was killing it. They were using him as a true workhorse as they had been. So Joe Brady's already come out and said, no, we're not concerned with injury. We're not going to lessen his workload to try to preserve him. We're still going to use McCaffrey the way he's used best. And I cannot wait to see what a full season of Joe Brady and this type of weapon look like. I would pay every dollar I have to go get him tonight, Nat, and it could screw you.
All right, hold on.
I'm going
let's
for
unpack
it.
that, and this is going to make us go over a little bit, but it's okay because it looks like you're not going to get swept away by a tornado. So we got a couple extra minutes.
I'm still alive here. Yes.
When you say you would pay every dollar you had, I really want to know what you mean by that. We got $200 budget in my league. ESPN, I believe, has him at $75. You would go 75.
Yeah, I'd go 75. Yes.
What would you go? I mean, it's hard. I mean, I'm wondering, where would you stop?
I do think
I know it's impossible to answer that question. There's other factors going on. I mean, 80 is 40% of your money.
Right. And I think he's worth it. I really do. The only reason you wouldn't be is if you're not very confident on your ability to pluck out some of these value guys.
I do think I can pluck out value guys.
Exactly.
I really do.
And I think you should be confident in that, especially at wide receiver. There's always those, last year when I did McCaffrey for 80, I got Calvin Ridley for $19. Those types of guys, you pluck them out, you get the right ones. Robert Woods was 17. You find a couple of those pretty good guys. Your second running back's probably not going to be great if you blow that much on McCaffrey. But even still, you might find yourself getting a nice value on David Montgomery, who probably isn't that sexy, or Chris Carson, a little unsexy upside.
I went Derrick Henry, Chris Carson last year, and that worked out pretty well. And then I got DK and then Allen Robinson for $10.
Yeah, it's just such a big edge, in my opinion, if you get a full healthy season of McCaffrey. That, of course, is the risk. And, of course, if you put all that money into him and he gets hurt like last year, you're just about dead in the water. I still made the playoffs I lost first round. It just wasn't that great of a team after you've burnt that much on him.
Yeah.
But I think you're a good enough drafter. And I think most people, if you're listening to this show, not that we're that good, we're making you good enough drafters to do it, but you're pretty deep into fantasy if you know us. So you probably have the right people around him too. I really like McCaffrey. I think you got to go for it.
I'm going to text you as the updates come in tonight. All right,
Absolutely.
let's talk about this receiving core. This is interesting. This is kind of one of those, I'm not sure how this is going to fall out. We got DJ Moore You got him down for 75 catches, 1125, and 4 touchdowns on 125 targets. He's there with Robbie Anderson, 86 catches for 1118 and 5 touchdowns, and that's on 131 targets. Then we got Terence Marshall, an intriguing one. You've got him, I believe I read this right, 64 catches for almost 809 touchdowns. So as many touchdowns as the other two guys put together. That makes them a pretty bunched up crew. You like them all over 100 targets, which is interesting. Are you hedging because you don't think any of them are crazy superstars, or do you really just see it getting spread around that much, even with McCaffrey in the mix?
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to, Nat, is it's just going to be spread out so much. And that's why I think DJ Moore might be the single worst pick.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that
right now.
Because just so you have on your projection board, you have Anderson 27, Moore 34, Marshall 36. On your big board, Moore 25, Anderson 29, Marshall 50. I have to imagine he's probably going up a little. These are like kind of similar numbers for these three guys. That would make me reflexively think you should start at the bottom and go up as opposed to the top down.
100%. I own Marshall in almost every best ball draft I've done because you can get him round 13, round 14. Whereas the other guys, I find myself getting Robby sometimes in round 6. The issue I have is DJ Moore as a player. I love. I think he is fantastic. And as you were saying, no one elite here. I think DJ Moore could be that guy. Sadly, they're not using him. Joe Brady's first year, Robbie Anderson and him tied for targets, and that was without McCaffrey there. That was without Terrace Marshall. Yeah, Curtis Samuel saw quite a bit of the target share. But ultimately, that's a concern that DJ Moore couldn't significantly outplay a Curtis Samuel to be that true alpha. So I really don't, as much as I like the talent with DJ Moore, he hasn't topped, similar to Kittle, hasn't topped 5 touchdowns in his career. He can do so much so well, but if this coaching staff isn't there to maximize him, then is he as good as we all consider? Maybe not. So he's the one I'm fading everywhere. If you have to pay a late 4th, early 5th for him, which is where he goes, there is so many guys I much prefer to him. He goes before Brandon Ayuk, before T. Higgins, and I think
I was just going to say he's not going above T. Higgins, is he?
Oh yeah, he is, and I think that's an enormous mistake by owners. So I like getting into this pie. I do not want it to be DJ Moore at his price tag. Make it Christian McCaffrey if you can get him at the top. Get Robbie Anderson around 6-7 if he's there. But otherwise, just Terrace Marshall everywhere, as you said. Joe Brady had him at LSU in that historic year. He was a touchdown maven there. He's 6'4", big body, first preseason game. He's moving into the slot. He's moving all over the place. And the slot really is what draws me to him because Darnold had targeted his slot right around 25% of the team. The slot guy has always led Darnold his target totem pole. So I don't think Terrace Marshall will pace this team in the targets, but I do think in terms of touchdowns, clearly, as you said, I think he could double up or combine what the other two guys do, given that big body, given the way I think Joe Brady's going to use him in the red zone and given all the other weapons around him. I love Marshall. I will go and get Marshall in every single draft I possibly can. Make sure you pay the $1 or $2 that it takes to get him tonight, Nat, because I think he's a stud.
All right. So I found this Panthers conversation really interesting. We did just hit time because we digressed a little bit, but we'll talk tight end real quick. I don't think there's a lot to say. Dan Arnold, 27 catches, 248, 3 touchdowns. He the worst tight end or lowest fantasy tight end on any team?
I actually, there might be 1 or 2 worse, but no, he's pretty close to the bottom.
He's in the conversation though, right?
Yeah. Certainly. And what's weird is last year, Ian Thomas ran like the top 6 in routes run for tight ends, but he finished like 60th in targets. He was essentially just a big body decoy out there. Dan Arnold does bring a little more athleticism. He's a converted wide receiver. So there is like a little bit of a scenario. Again, 20-round drafts or something as a backup tight end. Okay, I prefer Donald Parham of the LA Chargers, but still, I like Dan Arnold as a very, very late stab. They're saying Darnold to Arnold has been like a big camp connection. I just don't see how this guy sees any type of volume that's sustainable and consistent when you have the other 4 people in Christian McCaffrey, the 3 receivers we were just raving about. Where does he fit in to have any type of consistent value? I don't see it.
No, nor do I. All right, now for another team that is just, I don't really know what to make of this. God. I went and looked in on the projections. They had all changed since the last time I looked. At quarterback, certainly, we just don't know what's going on. No. I've seen your projections have Hill with 90% of the snaps, and right now you got Jameis getting almost all of them. So anyway, the numbers you have right now You got Jameis 353 for 549 for. I love this number, 3,999 yards. You could not bring yourself to put Jameis at 4,000. 25 touchdowns, 19 picks. That's a kind of Jameis stat line. I don't want to comment too much because I feel like I'm probably not going to be. These words aren't going to mean anything in like 2 days. But
exactly,
if I think if you believe Winston is going to be the guy, you might be a little low on his production. I'm not super sure he's the guy. But man, there's just so many balls up in the air for the Saints right now. I don't know. Mike Thomas. We'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know what to expect. What do you think? Can you set my mind at ease, or are you just as confused as I am?
I'm significantly confused, Nat, and thankfully we'll have Nick Underhill coming on.
Oh, bring him on.
Next week. Yeah, he'll be back. One of favorites of ours. One of the best.
Underhill, I believe, took the hypothetical of letting Ray Lewis hit him across the middle wearing an old-time leather helmet.
Yes, he did.
He's one of the tougher guys we've had on.
Exactly. Let's set that up for Underhill. See if he really means it when he sees Ray Lewis over the middle of the field.
Yeah.
No, but he's been doing every single day, breaking down it, and every single day I read his stuff over at, I think it's NewOrleansFootball.com. I forget the exact URL. I should have that. We'll obviously have it when we have our interview with him. He's amazing. He's been writing that Jameis has started to sneakily pull away. In the preseason game, it was a mixed bag for both quarterbacks. Hill threw a brutal interception his second drive. Jameis got kind of killed by a fumble. It's ugly. It's really ugly. And I agree with you. Like in a Sean Payton offense, I want to be higher on Jameis Winston if he takes over. If Taysom Hill takes over, ultimately I'd be higher on him too because he brings that Konami upside. But I see it as a situation. Jameis wins the job. And again, that's what Underhill's currently projecting. But he did say it's still a competition. They're still evaluating it by the preseason games and every day in practice. But let's say he wins it. Okay, so who does he have to throw to? Michael Thomas is going to be banged up. Exactly. That's why it's a little bit lower. I worry that Winston wins it, but then he has such garbage. Marquez Callaway being his number one for the first month of the season. How can he succeed? He's going to throw some interceptions. They're going to get fed up with him. And so I try to be a little conservative. All things said, a gunslinger like Winston in a Sean Payton offense does have top 10 upside. I mean, this guy, last time he was out there for a full season, led the NFL in passing yards.
Couldn't get a job the next year, I think.
He couldn't get a starting job the next year because he also threw 30 interceptions with that. So I don't know. It is, as you said, it's so hard to project. I just am worried that Winston's going to win it, but that's ultimately not even that sexy for fantasy because he's got nothing to throw to, even within this awesome offense that should yield some great results. I just don't think it will.
We'll talk about Kamara in a second. Other than Kamara, are you staying away from this team?
Pretty much.
And maybe including Kamara? I don't know.
I actually don't love Kamara, even though my projections, he's coming out crazy big in my numbers. So I'm starting to reconsider him a little bit more. Certainly in PPR leagues, you got to really consider him. I do love Marquez Callaway. We're going to talk about when we get to wide receivers, just because he goes so late and he's thriving in camp and just kind of one of those things. Sean Payton's new number one. He always just churns out these 1,000-yard receivers that nobody's ever heard of. Even if Thomas isn't there, whether there's Marquise Colston, Lance Moore, it's such a good, prolific offense. And Jameis Winston does have the arm that if Callaway is steadily the number one throughout the year, he could be a steal in round 13, 14 where he's going right now.
All right, well, let's talk about some of these guys. Let's go to Kamara. You alluded to the fact that your projections are giving him pretty decent numbers. Well, better than decent. 204 carries for an even 1,000, 10 touchdowns on the ground. You've got him getting 88 catches on 116 targets, 748 yards, and another 4 touchdowns. Much like McCaffrey, I kind of made this similar case. I think if he catches 88 balls, he's going to score more than 4 times on those. And if you're playing in a PPR league, 88 catches, that's not nothing for a running back.
No, that's a hefty total, and it's well within reach. That's kind of been his MO, maybe the best pass catching back outside of McCaffrey in the league right now. Certainly the most efficient. He's been first, 19th, and first in fantasy points per touch the last couple of years. That 2019 seems to kind of be the outlier where he was a little bit behind. Otherwise, he's been just pure dynamite every time he's touched the ball. And last year when Michael Thomas was out, so this is where I'm so stuck and torn on Alvin Kumar because he was last year a genuine league winner, especially when Michael Thomas was out. He became the de facto number one receiver. He averaged over 30 fantasy points per game. He was just a monster. And we already know Thomas is going to be out for, it's sounding like at least the first month of the season. You got to imagine they might hold him out, put him on the PUP, and really wait about 6 to 8 weeks. Kamara could be an absolute monster. But then you look at the flip side. Well, he also had Drew Brees, who targets running backs religiously. Even before Kamara, he's always been one of those check down pinpoint guys. And that certainly wasn't Taysom Hill. Kamara only saw 4 targets a game with Hill back there. He went from averaging like 25 fantasy points per game to 12, a bottom 24 running back with Taysom Hill at quarterback. So that's why I'm a little bit in the middle with this guy. I certainly want to see Jameis win it for Kamara's value. That would certainly put him up probably to number 3 or 4 in my rankings if and when that got locked in. But for right now, while we're in this waiting game, and even if Hill played, I don't want to be like, oh, it's automatically going to be only 4 targets a game. I doubt that. I think they're without Michael Thomas, especially, they'll be scheming towards Kamara. I do just get a little bit nervous about this offense just kind of being shitty. He does have a great offensive line, though, top 3, in my opinion, in the league, returning all 5 starters, great run blockers. So there's a lot going for him outside of the quarterback position, which is clearly the most important position for everyone around him. Kamara is definitely good enough to be able to supersede that, though.
All right, let's talk receivers. Marquez, Callaway, Mike Thomas, Traquan Smith. And we've already mentioned that Mike Thomas is out for a while. We remember 2 years ago, he was probably the best receiver in the NFL. Killed a lot of people last year.
Yeah.
I mean, really just destroyed a lot of people's seasons would be my guess. We had a guy in our draft pay $55 for him or something. It was just absolutely brutal. Anyway, you got Callaway, 57 catches, 718, 6 touchdowns on 87 targets. Traquan Smith, 42, 580, and 3 touchdowns on 69 targets. Thomas, I get that these are just impossible predictions to make for him. You got him for 53, 636, and 4 touchdowns. Get these guys with pretty similar stats, at least comparable stats. You got projection-wise, Callaway 57, Thomas 71. We'll throw that one out. And Traquan Smith 85. On the big board, you like Callaway at 46, Thomas 60, Traquan Smith at 68.
Yeah, to me, Thomas, just it's such a hard situation. I get both sides of it. The 10th rounder, that if he missed, the timetable became shortened and you get him after a couple weeks, then you're getting yourself an alpha wide receiver 1 in round 10, and all things are glorious. But the way it's just unfolding, where he's shitting on the team on Instagram and the team's calling him out, it just they've had these meetings recently to try to smooth things over, and that makes me feel, I guess, a little better. But I still worry he might not play all year. It could become one of those awful situations where he refuses to show up again. I don't know. I've decided to avoid him. Yeah, exactly. I've just kind of decided I don't trust Thomas at this point. I don't want you. I get why people would take the risk. I'm not going to do it. I projected him here for about half the season, what I think he would do. So clearly, in 8 games, if he gives you that, that's going to be useful stats. To me, I'm not going to do it. I'm not taking that plunge.
I'm not doing it either.
I'd rather go for Callaway, who I think is really going to have a great first half of the season. And potentially, if Thomas does get traded or sits out or is just, hurt all year, Callaway could be that de facto number 1. And we haven't, every single year, there's a Sean Payton, as I was saying, Lance Moore, Marquise Colston. Doesn't really matter who it is. This offense is just so dynamite through the air that if it is Winston throwing the rock, I could see Callaway having himself a season. So he's become my favorite round 12 or beyond receiver, the guy I have to get. It's him and it's Terrace Marshall, the same division we're talking about today, 2 of the best prime late round receivers you can go for. I think he's going to be the target hog until we get them back, especially I think I'm being a little too generous with the tight ends as we're going to get there. I think of some of those touchdowns, I'm going to start projecting the receivers.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk tight end a little bit. Adam Troutman. Can I get an Adam Troutman reference? 48 catches, 624, 6 touchdowns. And then Nick Vanette, who is even lower. You got Troutman as your 17th tight end, projection-wise, 24th on the big board. Nothing to get too excited about there.
No, and I think there's even more reason to be less excited than what I have him here. That's because they're saying Juwan.
That's a great phrase, by the way. Even more reason to be less excited.
Yeah, right. As if you needed more reason. Right. One is this guy Juwan James. I don't know anything about him, but Underhill keeps writing that he looks like the pass catching guy at tight end. He projects him for the Jared Cook style role, about being moved all over the formation and going deep. So one, we might have a new sleeper. I'm going to update these projections when we finish to reflect that there might be a new pass catching guy in town. Troutman is a great athlete. He should be the guy, but we saw what we, in the preseason already, we kind of saw what made him not a bust, because no one was really targeting him in fantasy last year, but what held him back from ever truly breaking out, he was pass blocking. 3 of his 9 snaps out there, he pass blocked. He only ran like 5 routes on the dropbacks. I hate that. I don't know why, because he, again, like I said, athletic guy, should have all the upside in the world in a Saint scheme that has been friendly to tight ends in the past. Jared Cook was top 2 in touchdowns the last 2 or 3 years combined, only behind Kelsey. It's just, it's ugly. I don't know. It should be a lot sexier than it is, and I know a lot of people are in on it. My gut has just decided to say the pass blocking was all I needed to see. I want nothing to do with Troutman this year. I'm off.
All right. That's fair, and I agree. All right. Last but not least, certainly not least, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes. Anything to say before I get into the players?
As it's pulling up here, I can guarantee you, I forget the exact ratios I have them at. It's going to be the most pass attempts in the league. If not, maybe the Rams will threaten them now that they've lost Cam Akers. So, yeah, 650 pass attempts compared to 391 rush attempts. It's a 62% pass ratio. That's right in line with what they had last year. So I think it's all going to come down to the arm of the GOAT himself, Tom Brady again. That's the Arians, no risk it, no biscuit style. We did see that start to gel. I'm very intrigued to see what these Bucs do, because it seemed like half the year they never were really synced up or on the same page. And then after the bye, Bruce Arians, I heard an interview with him. They talked about him and Brady having this phone call. What concepts do you like that we can work in, because it's not working fully right now? How can we practice these things better? And they had a really open dialogue, and you saw the results over the second half of the year. Brady was the QB forward fantasy, just ripping it down the seams. And obviously it carried him all the way to the title by the end of it all. So now that they've gelled like a full season of this offense, as long as Brady still has it at age 44, could be just fireworks central. I cannot wait to see what it is.
I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say as long as he still has it at age 44, but I mean, he still kind of had it at age 43. So
still did. Still had it. He had more yards per attempt last year than he's had in like 10 years since New England. And that deep ball was looking good. Like,
well, he was throwing to some real receivers last year. I mean, right. a lot of it in football is, obviously you still got to have it, but system and complementary players, and he fell into a real good one. Well, it didn't fall into it. He went there on purpose.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about it. So Brady, you got him 434 for 637. That is a lot of passing for almost 5,300 yards, 44 touchdowns, 13 picks. It's, to me, it's tough to argue with the numbers you've got for him, given the wide receiver core he's got. I assume that you're not even a little higher on the list. You've got him as your QB7 as far as projections, and 9 on the big board. I mean, that's an amazing stat line there that we just gave. I guess the reason you're not higher is you're not getting any running out of him.
That's it. Like, he has to hit 44 touchdowns and 53 yards for him to get to QB7. And he's only QB7 with those type of gaudy stats. Like, goes to tell you again, like, there's just, the ceiling is capped on any QBs that don't bring the leg points. And there are enough that you have to at least go for one of these running guys. If you pair him with a Brady, go for it. Sure. But yeah, like, that goes to show, I think he could hit these stats and still only finish as the QB7 in fantasy because of the cap ceiling. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk running backs. This is interesting and we do have to. It's interesting and disgusting. So in terms, here's what you've got. You got Fournette, 176 for 704 and 6 touchdowns, 31 catches. You got Rojo, CJ's boy, 125 carries for 625 and 5 touchdowns with no real passing game work. And you've got Gio Bernard, I want to say the corpse of Gio Bernard, but it seems like you've actually got him being a real factor here. 70 carries, 287 and a touchdown, and adding 66 catches for 561 yards and 4 touchdowns. As far as projection goes, this shakes out. You got Fournette at 44, Rojo at 54, Gio at 36. I mean, that's pretty bad. That you got a committee there of 3 guys and none of them really doing anything. I mean, you got Gio at 36. It's nothing. On your big board, you got Fournette 43, Rojo 41, and Bernard 46. It's clear you're not too excited about this running situation.
No, not at all. But I think what was interesting there is you said Bernard pops up as the highest value back here.
He does.
He's often going as the last back.
Similar to that Carolina receiving core.
Exactly. And that I've actually ended up with Bernard on quite a few teams because of how high I have him projected as a pass catcher. I think we've heard these comparisons a lot. The next James White for Tom Brady. They didn't really have that check down option last year. Rojo was very undependable with his hands. Fournette was like okay catching the ball, but was so slow and sluggish and not a great route runner. Bernard was like one of the few missing pieces. It's hard to say a Super Bowl team has a missing piece, but Brady has always loved having that complement out the backfield. And they have said, early in camp and OTAs, Bernard was all over the field, catching everything in sight, a high target for Tom Brady. I think that's going to be the case this year. I think he's really going to see, as I say here, 84 targets, 66 catches, a very high receiving workload to move the chains on third down. When you have these crazy outside weapons that can stretch the field, and when they've been going so deep, defenses are so far back on their heels, Bernard's just going to get these little 6-yard catches all over the place for free. Nobody's going to be able to stay with this guy because they're going to have all the safeties deep, and he can still beat linebackers in his routes. I love Gio Bernard as a late round stab. As I say, the highest scoring Bucs running back at the cheapest price tag. I think between Fournette and Jones, nibbling each other's cheese all year. You never know if one of them fumbles and is in the doghouse for a couple of weeks. They're both. I love Jones as a player. I think he's a great runner. I wish he would get a full workload. I can't wait to see him escape Bruce Arians and finally get that. But until then, give me Gio Bernard and don't give me anybody else from this backfield.
All right, the wide receiver situation, fantastic. That's not new news.
Right.
You have them all getting comparable amounts of targets. For a while, you had them around the same, but I think you've branched out a little bit. I don't actually have the targets in front of me, but I got everything else. You got Evans at 81 catches for 1174, 12 touchdowns, and that puts him as your wide receiver 12 projection-wise. Antonio Brown, 71 catches, 845, 6 touchdowns. Got him as your wide receiver 43 projection wise, and then Chris Godwin 88, 126 or 1126, 10 touchdowns. That puts him as your wide receiver 16. On the big board, you got Evans 13, Godwin 17, Brown 40. I'm just going to say it. I think you're low on Brown.
I might be. I mean, and all the training camp reports are Brown is killing it. Like they might have the strongest rapport of all the receivers with Brady, and that's scary. I mean, what he did, I think when he came in last year. And then from then to the end of the season, he ended up finishing as like the wide receiver 19 or 20 over that span. And that's without time to practice and get the full, obviously practicing, but not getting the playbook fully down. And you have a full offseason to process it. It is a tricky situation in that sense. And if anybody's going to get hurt here, I don't think it's Evans. I think it would end up being Godwin because Evans, he saw 15 goal line targets last year. I think he'll always be that kind of red zone beast. He's always going to be a good threat for 12 to 15 touchdowns a season. His yardage might take a ding. He's had 1,000 yards in all 5 of his professional seasons. Maybe this is a year he finishes under. But to me, he just does what he does so well, and he's done it so well for every year of his career. Like I trust that he'll still be that guy. I know Godwin's also great at the slot, and that's what Brady's historically loved. But so is Antonio Brown, and that's where it gets tricky. Is how does that end up getting shaken out? Is Antonio Brown still the AB of old? No, but he showed plenty of juice last year. We haven't really seen. There's a lot of games where like one of these receivers was missing last year, so it is tricky to judge how will it all be distributed now if all 3 of them stay healthy. It is a kind of a clusterfuck, but ultimately I find myself landing Evans a lot late round 3. I don't really land Godwin much at all because, like I said, I think he's the one that's the riskiest of this. And him and Evans go in the same spot. I have ended up with a lot of Antonio Brown round 7, 8 because, like you said, he has the upside to be the best receiver here. I don't think he is clearly with these projections, but that upside exists. So for round 8, like that's certainly like a lot of these guys because of the price. Bernard's the best target of the backs, even if I have him ranked lower. Terrace Marshall's the best of those Panthers receivers because of the price. I think Antonio Brown sneakily is the best receiver of the Bucs in terms of fantasy price and what could happen.
Yeah, I actually think I agree with that. I mean, you said he's not the Antonio Brown of old. He doesn't have to be. I mean, remember Antonio Brown of old was like all-time stuff. If he's 85, 80% of that, he's still just absolutely great.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens. I don't know. To me, wide receiver 40, I like him more than that, but hopefully other people value him around there too, and maybe I can get him on the cheap. Let's get into tight ends. These are guys I don't really think you want to play. Gronk, 43 catches, 559, 5 touchdowns. That puts him 20th on your projections, 19 on the big board. OJ Howard, been around forever, seems like. 32 catches, 448, 4 touchdowns, good for 27 and 30 on your boards, respectively. A lot of cheese nibbling.
A lot of cheese nibbling. That it's just a lot of tight end situations these days have a lot of cheese nibbling on each other, and that's what I see here. You know, Gronk did okay last year, but that was no OJ Howard. He got hurt in the first or second week. Gronk will still have his big touchdown days. You'll see plenty of Gronk spikes, but I do think this is like running through the 3 receivers, and then also the fact that Gio Bernard's now there. That might have been a lot of those third down targets that Brady would have gone to Gronk, someone he trusts. I could see a lot of that now shifting over to Gio Bernard. So not only are the 2 tight ends nibbling at each other, but the fact that Bernard's come there is just an even bigger rat chewing at the cheese. And so I don't like that at all. I'm not going on these tight ends. No way.
Gio Bernard providing even more reason to be less excited about the tight end situation.
Yes, exactly.
All right, that's going to do it for the NFC, whatever we just did. South.
Yeah.
That's the NFC. All right. I'm going to make sure I do my studying for the AFC like Monday morning, because if I do it before that, it's all going to change. So you want to talk, get into some comments, mailbag. We do have a few people that have been watching.
We got our regulars. I love to see it.
All right, let's get into it. Mike Schneider, 4 days strong. Absolutely.
4 days
We're
strong.
We're taking a 3-day break, but then we'll be back.
Exactly. We'll be off for another bachelor party. My liver gets punished once again. I don't know how I've lived through all these at this point. My wallet, my liver, everything's just getting bludgeoned this summer. Whatever. It's been one of the best summers I've ever had. Just been crazy.
We do a conference. We go to a bachelor party. We do another conference. That's what
exactly.
We do. Right. Charlie Preble, favorite time of the day. Man, that's nice to hear. That makes me really
appreciate it, Prebs, and I love seeing you every day here. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Toon says, hey, guys, I'm sure you're going to cover this. How much stock do you put in Bruce Arians saying he is, quote, going to be a major part of this offense, and he is talking about Gio Bernard when he asks that question?
Okay, I see. Oh, I said that underneath. I was wondering who he talked about, but yeah, we covered it. I projected it as such. 90 targets, 66 catches. That's a major part of the offense, and I buy it. I think it is a great value right now, Gio Bernard, especially if you play full PPR. And I'm such a huge fan of where James White and Gio Bernard are going, because they're going to have a nice steady 8 to 10 point. There's no real ceiling, but they're just so great to balance out. If you go running back, and then don't touch running back for 8 rounds, 9 rounds, you can still get guys that actually have some usability in PPR leagues. So yeah, I love it. I'm buying it, Kyle Toons.
Charlie Prebs says, I'm targeting Pitts in every league I'm in. No bullshit.
No bullshit. And Prebs is a beast. Every year I've talked to Prebs. He's always in his finals. I love Pitts. I get the player. It's more so just the price. Now, when I've seen him fall to round 5, if I'm looking at him versus Hawkinson, I typically go Pitts just because I'm an upside.
Yeah, because he's fun.
He's fun. He's upside. More people get pissed off when I draft him, and that's all my goal is to piss people off. But ultimately, it's more so the diversity. If I can get Hawkinson a round later for similar upside, I go with that. But Prebs, I don't blame you at all. Let us know, when are you taking that plunge? When do you go for him every draft, Preble? Are you burning that round 4 pick? Are you going to take him over a T. Higgins, over an Ayuk? Those are the reasons. The opportunity cost with him is a lot higher than the opportunity cost with Hawkinson.
Mitch says, whom has the bigger year, Higbee or Pitts?
I like the use of whom there.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Good use of the word whom. It is good use of intellectual crew that we attract here at the Roto Street Journal.
Oh, sure is. It's Pitts. I mean, I like Higbee. Don't get me wrong. We talked about how his stats are so great without Everett on our NFC West preview a couple days ago, but it's not even close for me. It's Kyle Pitts. This is a unicorn prospect. Higbee had that one flash in the pan and hasn't really shown much since then. Give me Pitts all day. Not even close.
Charlie says CMC is built different.
Sure is. And that's why he's projected for over like 100 points than the next closest, Alvin Cook. I love this guy. If you, like I said, do whatever you can to get that guy on your roster.
All right, the end. Is Koo still the number one kicker? Question. Nice.
Yeah, I think so. The one thing with Koo that might bite him in the ass this year is how much better in the red zone Arthur Smith is at play calling. They were the second most efficient team in the red zone, scoring wise, whereas the Falcons have been like bottom 5 the last couple of years. So that's what's made Koo so good, is how bad they've been in the red zone. If Arthur Smith is this good with as good as he is with the Titans with the Falcons, that's going to hurt Koo. But even still, Koo boots 60 yarders like the best of them. I love Koo. Yes, Koo is my number one kicker.
He's like Joey Sly if Sly made his field goals.
Yeah.
Michael Schneider says last year was a rough one with CMC as my first pick. Yeah, I'll bet.
It sucked. It was one of those years. I was sitting there, Nat, like so pumped that
I remember how excited you were on draft day. Yeah.
I got the first pick in one league, the second pick in another, and then the auction draft. So I had CMC in 2, Saquon in the other. I was like, my God, the fantasy gods have finally blessed me with the first time. I'm never at the top of the drafts. And sure enough, I get fucked in the ass. Like, it's brutal.
You ever seen Goodfellas? Of course you have.
Of course.
Okay. So you being so excited when you got CMC in the draft and everything like that, everything was good. Reminds me of when Joe Pesci thought he was about to get made and they took him to that house and then they shot him in the back. Then he realized it just at the last second. He's like, oh, shit. And they stabbed him. Right. I imagine that's probably – this was the fantasy football equivalent of that.
Just about right. Exactly. McCaffrey luring me to that house. Right.
Right. Hey, this is going to be great. It's going to be a party. Nope, you're dead. I feel you, Michael. I had Barkley at number 2.
Similar situation. Exactly.
The end wants to know, is Calvin Ridley worth 37 fab, Jamar Chase, and Cortland Sutton?
It's kind of an all over the place question that I can't really follow. Calvin Ridley is certainly worth that. Why is he on the free agents? I don't know. I can't really tell what Jamar Chase.
Yeah, are you trading him free agent money as part of the package?
Oh, is it? Maybe that's what it is. So 37 fab.
If that's what you're saying, then yes, absolutely.
So, if it's Ridley for all of that, Jamar, Sutton, and 37 fab, that's starting to get a little trickier because I do love Chase and I'm pretty high on Sutton. Even still, though, if your roster is pretty bad, like I would probably do it. Like I'm always on the side of the stud for other pieces, and I think it might take a year for Jamar Chase to fully realize his upside. Like I like that in the end. I would pull the trigger on that for sure.
I would. Classic second line. I'd be shocked if Jameis wins that job. Hill's got pictures of Peyton's wife or sister. Something for him to get paid and for this to be a competition.
Yeah.
You're not the first person I've heard say that.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe so. But all the reports are Winston's out playing him, so we'll find out. But that's a pretty good one, second line.
Yeah, Charlie says, I agree with Nat. AB could be super sneaky. Thanks, Charlie. He says, Brady's my favorite late quarterback. I'm trying to grab him in my draft tomorrow. He's on my list of a few that I'm interested in.
He doesn't typically go that late is the thing. Like
the people, I'm in an auction, and the people in my draft, he's one of those guys that someone's going to pay a premium for.
Yeah.
Because he's Tom Brady.
It's Tom Brady. Exactly. Like you just, the guys that don't know anything will see his name and pay $10 for him because it's Tom Brady. So yeah, if he goes late, of course, Preble, I like it. But I've been seeing him go like right around Justin Herbert. And if I'm going to take a quarterback in that range, I'm going to go Justin Herbert more often than not. I'm not taking a quarterback anywhere near there anyways. But you can't go wrong with it. You saw my projections, 44 touchdowns through the air. Like, I clearly like him. So yeah, go for it.
All right, Mitch coming back with, do you think Pitts outdoes Kittle?
No.
I don't.
I mean, there's like obviously the narrative because Kittle just never scores touchdowns, but no. Kittle, I would not, no. Kittle's like the best in the game right now. Not in fantasy game, in the real life game. That would be, if he somehow did that as a rookie, we'd be talking about a historic season. Which could.
Mike said, similar to what I said, my draft Saturday might be heavy in the NFC also, right? It's like, and then part of me wants to say, all right, we should start this a week earlier next year, but the stuff's changing so much that, we might end up screwing people if we did that actually. After
all the preseason action that we're going to see this week, these are going to be, even these NFC ones are going to be completely different, which is why, again, we'll encourage you when we get these up on the site next week, $20 for the projections and the guide. I was writing the guide throughout this morning before we signed on that. It's coming out good. It's It's one of the more useful things. Like, it's not quite as long as other things I've done in the past, but that's kind of the effort. I'm trying to really make it concise, digestible, like scan it at the beach, scan it in the draft, and the guys I'm in and out on in certain rounds. It's coming out great. I just really hope I have it live for you guys next week because I know the draft season is here. Yeah, you have your draft today. Schneider has his. I can't wait. So we got some time for these things to keep getting updated for sure.
All right. Absolutely. Charlie says, I'm willing to spend a fourth on Pitts. He's a freak.
I'm not going to argue. He's a unicorn. Right. Calvin Johnson as the prospect. I mean, certainly could definitely blow things out of the water as a fourth round pick if he hits his athletic profile. Like, yeah, but it's just a little too rich for me, perhaps. But I'm not going to tell you not to. Like, he's a great player.
He's at the 2 spot in his draft.
Yeah. But so Dalvin Cook, you're looking at, maybe Waller in round 2, like lock up an elite running back, elite tight end, and then maybe
he wants Pitts. He's not gonna blow a second.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
so he's going for Pitts.
Right. And I've been seeing a lot of drafts where like Mixon falls there, and I know Mixon's fucked us a lot, but late in round 2, I'll go right back to the well. I will. I certainly will at that price in this setup.
Kyle Toon says, "Fantasy gods bless you." Wait, that's not holy water, right?
Yeah. No, that's the fantasy gods. They don't bless you ever. They just piss all over you. It's certainly not holy water, Tunes. It is the urine of the gods.
Mitch says, ended up eventually causing him to get drunk week 8. So thank you, CMC, for going down last year. LOL.
Oh, that was the infamous. It was that week where he was supposed to play on Thursday night. He got ruled out. I thought my season was saved. It wasn't.
Oh, yeah. You posted all these memes of you, like, jizzing all over your computer.
Yeah, you remember that one?
Of course I do.
Exactly. Teaching the polynomials. And then it certainly got ruined when he didn't even end up playing. I was chugging like 10% IPAs live on camera. That was still to this day the drunkest I've ever been live on camera. I never hoped to get to that level again, but it was a fun night.
We had a few shows together where we both got pretty hammered. Yeah.
We're gonna do
that again.
There was that one, and then there was the one where Justin Herbert couldn't. I sent you the clip, I think, the other day, where I needed like 4 points from him to move on in the playoffs, and he scored like 1.2 or some crap. And I had drank 2 red bottles of red wine right before coming on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Remember that?
Yes, I absolutely do.
You had to carry. You just lugged me through that show. That was an
I
epic
was the bell cow that episode.
Yeah, we needed you that day.
Fun, though.
I was a
your girlfriend was
just.
I feel like she walked by at one point. She goes, "Are you drinking more wine?"
Yep. Yeah, I remember you had another bottle? Like, yeah.
The end. What division are you doing next? Can't wait. Haha. I think we are going to do the AFC West.
Yeah, I think we're starting we're doing the AFC in the same order we did like the locations. So I think we started with the West. So we'll start with the West.
We'll go West, East, North, South, I believe.
Yeah, West, East, North, South again. Yep. So that's what we'll do.
Toon says, I love that my draft is next Sunday. I get both weeks before our draft. I love that you guys are factoring us into your drafts. That's
hell
awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm glad. I mean, it's cool that some of you guys are setting your clocks to this and showing up every day. We really, really appreciate it. It makes us, and that's what makes this so fun. It's why we do it.
Mike says, what's your favorite fantasy football app to use? You mean other than the Roto Street Journal app?
Of course. Roto Street Journal. I would say, if you're asking about like league hosting, I'm kind of an old schooler and like Yahoo. Like, I know it seems lame, and Sleeper is good, especially for dynasty leagues.
Right. I really like AOL.com.
Yeah. My MySpace profile. You can find all my fantasy content. Exactly. But I do like Yahoo. I think they do a good job of it. That's where I have 4 out of my 5 leagues, and I like that they're all in one spot. ESPN's gotten better through the years, but to me, I have so many leagues in Yahoo that's just such a pain in the ass to go over to that one. I don't like MLF very much. They're not very user-friendly. And I've liked Sleeper. I don't know what your thoughts so far on Sleeper, Nat, since we picked up the Dynasty League, but I prefer Yahoo still.
I don't love Sleeper, and I wonder if it's just because like I'm old and out of touch.
It's kind of it, I'm sure.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. I always assume it takes me longer to learn stuff than you guys. But I don't know. I don't love the interface. We are on ESPN, the league that we're doing, and it's one of those things, kind of like you said, it's a pain to switch. I mean, our whole league history is on there at this point. Yeah. So we'll probably just stay
We're stuck
there.
in our old ways now.
Right.
We're stuck in our old ways.
Right. Charlie says, I'm so worried about Mixon, though. I know he's going to get crazy touches. I mean, you're
Yeah.
right. He's just burned me too many times.
He was supposed to get so many touches last year, and he didn't in the first half of the year. The year before, there's been these slow starts in back-to-back years, which is sickening. But all the reports are best player out of camp. You know, the offense, they have so much weaponry outside. The line is better. They've been addressing it. So everything's on his side. No Gio Bernard. Like, that's kind of what the pain in the ass these last couple of years, where Gio Bernard would come in the goal line. You're like, what the fuck are they doing? Why is Bernard jumping in for this touchdown? Where's Mixon? That's no longer there, and they've already said they're not interested in any type of load management or splitting this thing. Like, so
right.
As gross as it is, like, Mixon's one of the guys alongside Antonio Gibson, I think in round 2, those are the two guys like late second that sometimes fall that have genuine top 3 running back upside, and that's hard to pass up, no matter whether you have your bell cow already in place or not.
All right. Mitch says, have a great weekend. You too, Mitch.
You as well, brother.
2 next Sunday as well.
Hell yeah. That's what I like to hear.
ML, what do you think of Latavius Murray's role in New Orleans? I heard a rumor he might get cut. Well,
yeah, they were saying
cut, I don't. If he gets cut, like, I'm pretty low on him.
Yeah, exactly. I've liked Murray because he's kind of those handcuff with benefits we talk about. The games that Kamara has missed, he's scored right around 27 or more fantasy points. I mean, he was a stallion. But now, if he is truly on the roster bubble, I don't know that I buy these reports. Like, they have a decent amount of money invested in him. I've seen those 2 reports too, ML. I'd be shocked. That would be a shocker if he gets cut. But obviously, if he gets cut, that means some backup running back is going to have some real value there. We'd have to track who it is. As some undrafted free agent rookie really impressed in week 1. That's why that report came out. I forget his name. I don't buy it.
I got 4 words for you. Bring in Frank Gore.
He's still a free agent. Like, he'll go somewhere and ruin someone's value at some point this year. There's no doubt about it.
Mike says all my leagues are now on Sleeper. All right, so it's probably better than I thought.
It's a good platform, good news alerts. Like, I like a lot about Sleeper. I do.
Toons said made it to the championship last year in 2 out of 3 leagues, won 1, lost 1. We got to get back there and keep that money flowing. Yep.
Absolutely. Right around Christmas time. Nothing better than that little cash injection.
And last but not least, Preb says he would love Gibson in the second. I also am, like I said, on the NFC East show we did, I'm high on Gibson.
I'm very high on Gibson. He's one of my favorites. Well, Wolfpack, always a blast, especially all you guys showing up every single time, whether you're here with the replay or here live with us. If you don't mind giving that the thumbs up, it helps us get to more people, and that's the goal, is growing the pack. You can find all our content at rotostreetjournal.com. If you have the iOS, we do have an app that we're hoping to update and make even better, but it's still a nice, clean way to get all our content. You can find all of our other stuff at the Fantasy Fullback Dive if you prefer podcasts, where we pave your path to 2021 titles, rather. So used to say 2020 after last year.
I know, right?
But 2021 titles, baby, is what we're going for. And ultimately, you can find me at RotoStreetWolf on Twitter if you want to interact there. Always open to the DMs, all that good stuff. So, guys, I'm the Wolf.
I'm the Truth.
In a world full of fancy sheep, guys, be that wolf. Later.